There's a 99% chance that your cold emails are not booking calls for this one brain that simple reason, and it's not your deliverability, it's not your leads, and it's not your offer. This one thing is what separates people making 10 to 20k a month with cold email from beginners who keep saying, I'm not interested in their inbox, then coming back to YouTube to watch more cold email videos, still like just getting ignored and quietly wondering what they are doing wrong. And don't worry, because today I'm going to break down exactly what this one thing is, how it actually works, and how you can use it to yourself to land your next client faster than you expected. Because brother, today I'm not going to give you a new body copy, I'm not going to give you a new cold email structure, I'm not going to give you a magic line that you can copy and paste. I'm going to show you what's been holding you back behind scenes, even if you didn't know it existed. And that one thing is psychology. Now, before you click off, hear me out, okay? Because I know exactly what you're thinking right now. Like, psychology, that's just so complicated, I just want something I can use right now. And that reaction right there is the entire problem. Because this is the exact difference between people making 10 to 20k a month with cold email and people who keep coming back to YouTube to try to fix it. Beginners think psychology is just something extra. They think it's optional. They think it's something you look after you have the right template. But killers see it the opposite way. They understand one simple truth. Cold email is not about writing. It's not about structure, and it's definitely not about the clever line. Cold email is about one thing only: getting a real human being to decide to reply. And humans don't decide based on logic. They decide based on how their brain feels about what they are reading. That's why two emails can say the almost same thing, and one gets ignored and the other books calls. Not because the words were better, but because one understood how the brain works. So if you have been jumping from video to video, trying new tips, trying new formats, and nothing is changing, it's not because you're missing a tactic. It's because you have never been taught the rules of the game you're actually playing. And once you see those rules, everything else finally makes sense. So let me show you how this works. I'm going to break down the 5 psychological levers. Each one is simple and each one is practical for you. And each one shows up inside real cold emails every single day, which actually books calls and gets clients. And once you understand every one of these, you will never look at cold email the same way again. Now let me show you the first psychological lever, because this one alone explains why most cold emails get ignored, and it's called the reasoning bias. And don't really overthink the name, you already experience this every single day. The reasoning bias is simple. When people are given a reason, they are far more likely to say yes. But not a good reason and not a smart reason, just a reason. This was proven years ago in a very famous experiment. People were waiting in a line to use a copy machine, and someone walked up and said, "Can I skip the line?" And most people said no. But when they added one extra word, "Can I skip the line because I need to make copies?" people said yes. It was the same request but a different outcome, and the only difference was the reason. It was obvious that they needed to make copies. They were at a fucking copy machine, brother. But the brain just doesn't care about it. The brain just wants a reason to justify the action. And now here's where the most beginners actually mess up in cold email. They ask questions with no reasons attached. Are you open to a quick call? Can I send you a Loom, or do you want to learn more? From the brain's point of view, there is no reason to say yes. So the safest answer is just to ignore or say I'm not interested. But killers with copy do this differently. They never ask without explaining why. Not in a long or a salesy way. Just one simple, clear reason. For example, I recorded a 2-minute Loom video because I noticed something very tiny optimizable thing on your site that's costing you leads, right? Or, bro, I just reaching out because I helped another company in your space fix the exact same issue and we generated for him like 50k. Nothing fancy, nothing clever, just giving the brain the permission to say yes. This is why templates don't save you. You can use the same words as someone else, but if you don't understand why the brain moves, you will never get consistent reply. And this is only the first level. The next one is even more important because it controls whether your emails feels confident or just needy. Now let's talk about the disinterested authority bias. This one is simple, but most people completely mess it up. The disinterested authority bias means this: the less you care about the outcome of the email, the better results you get. And I don't mean pretending not to care. I mean actually being okay either way. Think about it like this. Like a famous singer or actor coming up to you and asks you for something. But if they sound like, please do this for me, or I really need this, it would mean a lot if you would say yes yes, you immediately feel a resistance. But if they sound like, yeah, no worries, if this is not for you, all good either way, you suddenly want to do it more. Not because they pushed harder, but because they didn't push at all. The exact dynamic shows up in your cold emails. Here's the mistakes beginners actually make. They assume the person they're reaching out to has a problem. So they write their email from that assumption, but they write it in a needy way. And from the other person's point of view, it feels like this. The person just wants my money. They're not trying to help me. Why would anyone trust that? Now compare that to an email written by someone who's genuinely disinterested in the outcome. They're not trying to convince, they're not trying to force a response. They know one simple thing. If the person has a problem, they will respond. If they don't, they won't. And that mindset completely changes how the email feels. Instead of sounding like someone's chasing a sale, you sound like someone offering help and just walking away. And ironically, that's what makes people lean in. Let me give you like a real example from one of my clients. This is something they actually wrote in their email. I've seen your IG getting good traction. Your DMs must be full. Now stop for a second and think about how does that feel to read. Does that sound someone who doesn't care about the outcome? Or does it sound like someone's trying to set up a pitch? To the person reading it, it feels low state. It feels like, I'm saying this so I can sell you something. That's neediness. Not because of the structure, not because of the intent, but because of how it's framed. And this is why you need to rethink every single line in your copy. If in any way your words feel like they are trying to influence the outcome, you instantly lose the disinterested authority. But here's the interesting part. We didn't just remove that line. We replaced it using a completely different principle. And that brings us to the third psychological lever. This one is called the polarity bias. And at first it might not make sense, but keep the example in your head as I explain it, and it will make sense by the end of this. The polarity bias means this. You get better responses when people either love you or hate you. And here's why. The goal of a cold email is not to sound nice. The goal is to create emotion, because emotion is what makes people act. And the fastest way to create emotion is to say what you actually think and write in a way that's aligned with who you are. That's why I don't even like calling this polarity bias. I like it calling using your fucking personality. And here's what that really means. When you use your personality in your emails, one of two things happens immediately. Some people will love you and they will want to work with you, or other people will hate you and they will never want to work with you. And that's perfectly fine, because either way, you get a response. You don't get left on scene. You don't get the same generic "I'm not interested" response. You get engagement. I can't tell you how many prospects have told me this, that the only reason I replied is because you are different. This is the best outreach I have seen, or I don't usually respond, but this stood out. This I've got like thousands of times. And the reason is simple. I'm not afraid to use my personality. If someone doesn't want to work with me, it doesn't matter how perfectly I twist my words, we are just not a good fit. And that's exactly how it should be. Now, let's go back to the earlier example, where the email was clearly trying to influence the outcome. I told my friend to not write it in that way. And I told him what I would do instead. Personally, I would write something like this. I've seen your IG, bro, and I bet your DMs are full. LOL. Now, notice what's happening here. I'm not saying that to manipulate the outcome. I'm not saying it to set up a pitch. I'm saying it the way I naturally speak. It's casual and it uses slang. It sounds human. If someone likes that style, they will lean in. If they don't, they just lean out, right? Either way, it works. And yes, using slang actually helps. Not because slang is like magic, but because it attracts the right people and just repels the wrong ones. And that's the secret to the polarity bias. And to be honest with you, I had people replying to my emails saying that, bro, I just hate the way you write. And that's perfectly fine with me, because they still replied. They took the time to write back. Some of them also wrote like long ass messages just to tell me how much they hated it. And right now, if you're not getting replies at all, that's a massive upgrade. Do you see the difference? Hate responses mean engagement, but silence means nothing. And that's why the polarity bias is so crucial. But now that we have covered 3 biases you must use, there is one specific place in your email where most people fail. And if you don't use the next bias there, you will never be consistent. Honestly, I just wish I started this video with this one, because this next bias is the most important of all. And let's talk about the novelty bias. This one is extremely important because it lives in the first or second line of your email. And if you mess this up, nothing else really matters. I call this the unique appreciation. So what is the novelty bias? The novelty bias means this. When something feels new or different, people pay more attention to it. The human brain is basically wired to notice novelty. And in cold email, that matters at the very beginning, specifically the second line of your email, right after the greeting. The reason for that is very, very simple, because if your second line is something they have seen before, you immediately get categorized. You became just another cold emailer. And once you're categorized, the response is automatic. I'm not interested, or just no reply at all. And that's why I teach all of my clients to use a unique appreciation in the second line. So what is that unique appreciation? It's an appreciation line written in a way that they have never seen before. You're still appreciating something real, you're still being honest, but you're saying it through your own personality, using novelty instead of a generic praise. This is where the polarity bias and the novelty bias work together. Let me give you an example. Say I'm reaching out to content creators, specifically coaches. I just know one thing about coaches. They create content to share value, to attract the right people and close them later. So logically, I want to appreciate the value in their content. But if I just write, your videos are really valuable, I'm instantly categorized. That line has been read 1,000 times. It triggers nothing anymore. Now, watch what happens if I say the same thing, but in a novel way. This is something I would actually write using my own tone. To be honest, bro, I calculated your value per minute and I've never seen anyone have it this high. Same appreciation, but a completely different reaction. Because now the brain stops. It wants to understand it, it wants context, it wants more. And this is why the novelty bias is so powerful. First, you don't get categorized. So you instantly avoid the I'm not interested reply. Second, when something is new, people spend more time on it. They lean in instead of skimming. And third, you break their default mindset. When someone actually sees an outreach email, they think like, here we go again, another cold emailer. But a strong, unique appreciation interrupts that thought. They start thinking, wait, this person is actually different. This is actually interesting. That's why I tell all of my clients this, like if you're not using a unique appreciation in your emails, don't expect good results. You're fighting an uphill battle from the first line. And here's the last thing to understand. Novelty bias isn't the only thing you can use in your appreciation line. There is one more psychological lever that matters even more in the exact same spot. And once you understand it, you will realize why most people never get past the not interested. That's the fifth and the final lever. This is where we use specificity. This is the specificity bias, and this is all about attention. The specificity bias means this. The more specific something is, the more attention it gets. Let me show you what I mean. If I tell you, yo bro, yesterday I ate a pizza and it was really good, you don't really care, right? But if I tell you like, bro, the pizza I had yesterday was perfectly warm. The cheese was melted just right and it was still sticky. The pepperoni and the corn fit so well together that the second it touched my lips, my mouth started watering. Now you're paying attention, right? You're picturing it, you're thinking about, like you want to know more. That's specificity. And the exact same thing applies to cold email. When you write a unique appreciation, it cannot just be novel. It has to be specific. Otherwise, it just feels generic. And let me go back to the earlier example. Instead of saying, to be honest, bro, I calculated your value per minute and I've never seen anyone have it this high, I would add specificity. For example, to be honest, bro, your value per minute, it was 23.7 and the average I usually see is around 12.4. And now the brain goes like, what the hell is that? How did he calculate that? They just want to know more. And not because you asked them to, but because you were specific. And here's another example. Say you want to tell someone their content is actually good. You could say, not gonna lie, your content got my attention. That's fine, but that's still vague. Now watch what happens when you add specificity. Not gonna lie, your content got my attention. I literally binged them for 40 minutes straight. That's believable. It feels real, and now you're not just another person saying nice things. This is why pairing novelty with specificity is powerful. Novelty stops them from categorizing you, and specificity makes them believe you. And once that happens, your positive reply rate is no longer zero, guys. So now you know all of the 5 psychological levers. The reasoning bias, the disinterested authority bias, the polarity bias, the novelty bias, the specificity bias. And here's the real takeaway. These don't just work in one place. They work on every single line of your email. If you learn to apply them word by word, I'm confident you will be the next person making 10, 20 or 30K a month with cold email. And if you want me to personally help you write your cold emails or your email body copy, book a call using a link in the description. I will talk to you soon.